When I grew up on the farm in Karangi, I reckon life was about as good as you could ever get. I had immense amount of freedom to do all the things I thought I ever wanted to do. When I was big enough to reach the pedals in the farm machinery, the tractors and so on, I could drive. And we had to hone our skills in very early, otherwise we were reefed out of the seat and the next brother got in. I was fortunate that my dad was in rallies a lot and in hill climbs in the 50s. He did a lot of the they're called Red X trials, mobile gas trials, and my dad Eddie did those with his brother, and I think that probably certainly assisted or helped my interests in my own career, you know, to get on with it. I knew it could be done. Dad had done it. It was 1960 that he drove a Volkswagen in a 500-mile race at Phillip Island, and I know and I can remember that he was leading the class, and it was a big deal in those years, the class winners. But the last pit stop, the guys didn't put the petrol cap on properly, and they were standard petrol caps, and the petrol all sloshed out well before it should have been used, and they ran out of petrol, so they didn't win their class. And team and the reliability is always the most important thing, and unless you got that, you still got nothing. And 1968 was a big year for me. It was the year I got my car licence, and I got it on the day I was 18, and it was also a big year because I went in a Around Australia Ampol trial, it was called, with my dad. You know, to go in my first competitive competition with my dad in a rally, I thought it was fantastic. This was well before I started my own career. Then my dad, he did all the driving. He tipped it A over T, I think it's called, and wrote it off. And first time he'd ever damaged the car, and in all his rallying. And so it wasn't to be an excellent start. It was just to be a start though. And I thought, hang on, there's something here. I've got to press on with this. Whether it be the farm tractor or the old bomb, it just felt so good to drive something, and it's really there today still. That's what motivates me in the racing world. I like driving, and I like putting the car on the limit to, it's a sort of a test of skill somehow. I used to go into the newsagents like all my other mates, and we'd read the magazines in the whilst you never bought them, and they'd all read the Playboys, and I'd read all the car magazines. I'd come across these Formula One guys, the pictures in there, they'd have fancy cars and fancy lifestyle and plenty of money and fancy girlfriends, and I thought, this is me. How do you get there? And I wanted to go there, and then Formula One. I went to Malala for my first race in 1969. I'd bought a Formula V. I was pretty sure before those first private practice sessions that I had everything it took to win races. And I went to my first practice day, and I couldn't complete a lap without spinning. I thought, I can't believe it. Why am I spinning all the time? It's as hard as it looks. The first race finally came up, and there were many sleepless nights before that. And I actually don't remember exactly where I come, but I can tell you it wasn't fairy tale. I didn't win. I think I was either last or second last, and that was a big shock to the ego. What I actually gained from the Formula V racing was that I demonstrated to myself that I could win races, and that's a big thing when you're a young bloke. You're not sure whether you're any good. You may think you're a good guy, but until you start proving it to yourself, you're really nothing. And I then, if you like, was proving it to other people that, hey, I could drive, and was winning races, and that really led to my career as a professional driver. Bib Stewell organisation, run by Bib, he was looking for a driver for his Formula Ford team, and I was selected amongst some others to have a test and so on, and went through all that with flying colours, and that was the first of my sponsored drives, or driving somebody else's race car, first professional drive I ever had, and it was to be the first of a long, many years of driving for somebody else. It wasn't until the 1971 series that I got Mac really together and won heaps of races, and won the Formula Ford Driver to Europe Championship. I had a car from the Elfin company in South Australia to take to England, but I didn't have an engine. And I went to the Ford Motor Company, and they said, oh no, we don't give out engines. And the guy out there said, hey, why don't you give Alan Moffat a ring? So, all right, I don't know Alan Moffat, but he was a big hero to me in those days. And so I gave him a ring, and I went down, and a little bit of small talk for about 30 seconds, and he says, now how much do these engines cost? I said $620, and he picked up his checkbook and wrote out a cheque. He said, go buy yourself an engine, and I wish you well.
When Larry won his Formula Ford championship, that I just won Bathurst, so there were a few people at the Ford Motor Company that were happy to do me a favour, and when I heard that he was struggling a bit at the time, the cost of an engine didn't set me back too much.
By winning the Formula Ford Driver to Europe Championship or Series, that was a pretty solid step of getting into Formula One. I went to this British Brands Hatch track for the World final, and that was a real eye-opener, because after the first practice session I looked down the sheets to see where I was, and I was used to looking up the front of the list from Australian days, and went down page 1 and page 2 and page 3. I finally got to my name. I was 86th fastest out of a field of 120, and my God, I can't believe this is what's happened, and the next practice session though, I moved up to equal 5th quickest or equal 3rd quickest, I can't remember which. That was a real turning point in my mental approach to the racing. I had to crank myself up to a much higher notch than I'd ever thought I needed to. When I was on the limit in Australia, I was really only driving at 7/10, and it was a real challenge to get up to where the rest of the world was. The good performance I had at Brands Hatch opened a lot of doors immediately, and I had offers of free cars and so on, and that's how I got into Formula One. Chris Amon, a New Zealander, very good driver, has started his own team and wanted to run 2 cars, and I'd caught his attention for some reason, and I, as a young bloke, was absolutely excited about this. A guy who owns Formula One cars wants me to drive for him, and I'd only been in Europe 1 year, and so I jumped at that. But it turned out to be not a good team, I suppose, for lots of reasons, mostly technical. I first met Bernie Eccleston in 1973 at the French Grand Prix at Paul Ricard. I got to know Bernie very well, and a vacancy come up in Formula One. He rang me up and said, "Hey, I've got a vacancy here because of, I forget the exact reasons. I think Carlos Reutemann left the team to drive for Ferrari, and there's only 3 races left in the year, and he wanted to put me in," and I was delighted that he did that, and that's how I got into Formula One with Bernie. But it didn't last because I couldn't hold my drive into the next year because of problems with the sponsorships of, I know Martini and Rossi wanted a name driver. They didn't want an unknown bloke from Australia. They don't even sell Martini and Rossi in Australia. In the end, Bernie had to yield to the pressure because I could not pay any of the bills. I brought no commercial clout with me. It left me out in the cold, so I only had a short stint there. I used to then see Bernie Eccleston well after I'd left Formula One and returned to Australia. But now we've moved to Melbourne and more time's moved along and Bernie's got more busy. I don't seek him out anymore because I'm sure he's got better things to do than talk to his old drivers. But he was a good lad and a very honest bloke. Formula One teams, especially if they're towards the back of the grid in those days, always suffered from lack of preparation. And it cast me, in my mind, very firmly in future, control your own world. I controlled my Formula V and my Formula Ford, my European Formula 3 championship. I was totally in control and I won races. I got into F1. I weren't in control and things fell apart a lot and I failed. And, I had to accept that, but I've learned from it. My greatest regrets in my whole Formula One career is that I didn't make it as such. I did 13 Grand Prix. I didn't make it, and mostly I know I didn't make it, not because I didn't have the ability, but I was quite naive in the political world in those days, and I sort of happily walked away from Formula One in 1978, and but then I had regrets and so on, but I got over all that now.
Back in Oz, Perkins immediately flung himself into touring car racing, teaming up with the chronically flamboyant and occasionally outrageous Peter Jansen, co-driving a Commodore.
The Peter Jansen connection or whatever was the real introduction to my Australian touring car racing, and it was a really good experience because I've come across this eccentric bloke and all he seemed to live on was gin and tonic and stuff. But he drove really well. I couldn't believe it for a guy who was not focused as such on racing. Once he got behind the wheel, he did a damn good job.
I talked him into it and I flew him out, and we had 1 year together. Then he liked it and quite a bit, and then I flew him out again and again.
Tremendous excitement here in the tower as well as out on the circuit. There's the man who is the only hope for Holden this time. Now Colin Bond is still going. Moffat is slowing, there's no doubt. He was 125 miles an hour down the straight, still pretty rapid for someone with front end troubles. Bond was 154 miles an hour, about the same speed that the Peter Jansen Perkins car has been achieving down the straight.
I had a great time with him. I'd come out for Bathurst. I came out for the 77 one, came third. In 79, I then came out again for Peter Jansen, and we came second, and the year after again came second again.
And that was as a privateer, just our own cars and what money I could find. But we always put reliable cars on the road, and Larry made sure of that.
I got on very well with this guy, and nearly 30 years later, I've never had a crossword with him.
Everybody said we would not last a week together. There'd be one terrific eruption. Look how many years we've known each other, and we'd raced with each other. I think on the books about 4 years. We never had a crossword, never had an argument. I think the only time he ever yelled at me was when I stupidly went off when we were driving around together.
We were doing the parade lap at Bathurst. He drives right off the road and starts throwing cherry white ropes out the window at the fans. And I've grabbed the steering wheel off him and dragged it back on the road. I said, "For Christ's sake, Peter, like, we're on our race tyres and you know, in 20 minutes we're going to be on the starting grid and starting the race. And here you're driving all over the rocks and everything. And old Jansen, he thought he was doing a good thing. He's looking after his sponsor, Cherry Ripe, but and forget the race car tyres. But we had a crossword then, I tell you. A very colourful character and a very down-to-earth bloke. And I've formed a very good friendship with him, and I certainly see him still today. I joined HDT after I'd done Bathurst 3 or 4 times with Jansen. Peter Brock rang me at some stage of the game and said, look, hey, would I co-drive with him? And I said, oh yeah, we could have a look at that, but I said I prefer to run the workshop. I want to run that workshop and I'll co-drive at the same time, because the reliability record of HDT, the Holden dealer team in those days, was okay, but I know their second car had never finished 6 years in a row at Bathurst, you know. So I wanted to address all those problems, and Peter said, yeah, that's fine. So that's exactly what I did. I took over the workshop. Certainly I was amazed to discover that the discipline of the mechanics at night wasn't what it needed to be, and there's a lot of the guys thought they were on a holiday camp, and I quickly put an end to that, and that meant that the beer consumption and all those sorts of things after hours was suddenly stopped and all put down to an intelligent level. And
quite often Larry had come to our rooms to check that we're all tucked into bed nicely, and of course we'd be in there tucked away but with all our good gear on underneath. So as soon as he'd come and done the room check, we'd give it 5 minutes when we'd be off out the window.
No way, stand by for the pandemonium that's about to break loose as Peter Brock comes round Murray's corner to take the checkered flag at the end of the great race.
He's done it, he's won it, the 82, James Hardy 1000.
05, Peter Brock is in the pits.
Well, one sensation after another in this race. The leader of the race coming in very slowly too. Just crawling into the pit area, the mechanics hustling around to find out what's wrong. They're putting fuel in. Anyhow, that's automatic. Larry Perkins, the co-driver, adopts the role of team manager, says, what's the trouble? They've got the bonnet up, it's something up front.
Not much doubt about what's happened to Peter Brock. There's a very large lump of oil lying around down here, puddles of it everywhere. And quite obviously at the end of the straight there was this great cloud of blue smoke came from the car, and it's quite apparent that he's blown an engine or blown a gasket of some kind, probably around about the sump area.
Here's Peter Brock now walking into the pit area.
To break the bad news to brother Phil, do you think?
I think so. He's saying, I'll take over, Phil, because there's no sweat, mate. This is the car that carries the hopes now of the Holden dealer team. John Harvey, who has yet to win a race, who will come in 4 laps from now and hand over to Peter Brock, who will then do a 30-lap stint.
And I very clearly remember that race because the day before we had a briefing, and I said to Peter and John Harvey, and Peter's brother Phil was driving, I said, now if we blow up, we will be doing exactly what the rule book allows us to do, and you're allowed to take over another team, another car from your team. And so when our car blew up, we took over this number 25 car, and I know Phil Brock and John Harvey to this day still got their noses out of joint about that.
The only thing that annoyed me about the whole thing, that once they took over the car at the first pit stop, I think they rejoined in 5th place and then eventually took over the lead and won the race, that Larry and Peter just decided to keep the car for the rest of the race, and I didn't get another opportunity in the car. But that was, didn't really matter.
The rules were very clear that you could only take over their car, you couldn't mix the drivers up. So once we took over their car, Peter and I had to be the driver. I remember John Harvey saying immediately, what am I going to do? Like, meaning come up on the podium. I said, you did your bit. You drove the first 20 laps and kept it intact. You're up on the podium with Peter and I without the slightest shadow of doubt.
They're racing and getting away smartly as Peter Brock on the outside. Fury miffed the start completely, and Johnson ranges up on the inside to take over second place as they run to the first corner. Okay, Peter Brock is taking a breather for the moment, and I think he would be delighted to see his co-driver and a winning co-driver of that in Larry Perkins still at the head of the field.
I felt that we had to win. I mean, if we didn't win, we would be the failures. So to have won the third one again, and especially get the first and second, I was pretty proud about that. But at the same time, I was realistic enough to say to myself, but hang on, you were the best funded team and you had all the best bits, etc., etc. And the competition was very thin on the ground, and like, they're all real facts, and you don't have to tell the world about them, but you got to recognise it up here. So they weren't, that was good and all that, but not the big deal. Peter and our association come to an end, and decided it was time to leave, and we left quite amicable on that. He wanted to run it himself. Well, what I gained, I suppose, was a cementing of a reputation that the preparation side of it was extremely sound, and it paid dividends, and my driving also. Suddenly, after now 6 times at Bathurst, I'd had 3 wins, 2 seconds and a third, so I was picking up a few sort of points along the way. Yeah, I left the Holden dealer team about mid-85 with the intention, well, hang on, I want to go touring car racing now myself, but I'm not going to do it unless I've got an engineering factory behind me. Owning my own team and being a driver, I think it overall helped me. It's just the way I am. I wanted to control everything. I wanted to know, the nuts and bolts of it. I wanted to not ever have to blame anyone else.
I admired him for doing that, and it forced Larry out into the marketplace. He very quickly established his own team. I think he was happier than Larry being the boss of his own operation. Everything he did revolved around him wanting to have what he required to win at Bathurst, and he proved very quickly that he was quite capable of doing that.
Larry the endurance man, is that a fair assessment? Yes, I think so. I think he loves to be fast and match the other guys, but he loves the whole equation of endurance racing. He loves the strategies, he loves building the car that'll last the longest, and he loves obviously driving at a speed in these endurance races to win. He's got a few more Bathurst under his belt. He may not necessarily contest sprint races for many years to come, but I think Bathurst is love, and that's his home ground, and that's where he loves to perform.
Oh, without a doubt. I mean, his performances during the sprint season are always pretty good. He's a hard guy to beat, on any day. But in the Enduros, I think he builds such a good car, teams up with a good sprint driver, so he does the endurance bits and lets Russell do all the qualifying, and they team up really well. They're probably the favourites for every endurance race, I'd say.
Le Mans, the famous 24-hour sports car race in France. A long, demanding circuit, a long, demanding race. It's a technical, physical and mental nightmare.
I was pretty pleased to have an invitation from Walkinshaw to go to Le Mans in 1988 with the Jaguar. I'd been there 2 times before. I think Walkinshaw saw that I was a reliable driver, and he obviously knew that I had F1 experience, and all that added up that I could do a good job for him.
The TWR Jaguars are pulse quickeners, 800 kilograms of carbon fibre wrapped aerodynamically around a V12 7-litre, 700 horsepower, 5-speed rocket.
Been used to over the years, really. Right-hand gear change and 700 or 800 horsepower is all going back to when I was in Formula One, and it's a good.
The Jaguar was a tremendous car to drive, and it had a lot of downforce, a lot of aerodynamic downforce, and really that was the reason that I could drive it at very high speed in the wet on slicks. It wasn't because of my inherent skill. It had so much downforce. The water was squeezed out under the tremendous load, and slicks worked very well in the wet. And But the cornering forces were very high, the braking distances were very short, and it just had tremendous power. It was a superb car. You know, once I got there, I must admit, I said to myself, you know, really, what am I doing here? Why am I doing this? I don't need this. Because we were just touching 400 kilometres an hour down the straight there, and that was the long Mulsanne straight at Le Mans. I was amazed that they weren't putting wet tyres on. I thought, oh no, this is my worst nightmare. You know, we all know about the horrendous accidents that happened at Le Mans. And so I went out and it was sprinkling with rain, and I drove down the straight at, I don't know, I looked at the tacho and worked out I was doing about 180 miles an hour. I know I went on to do 3 straight stints in it, and it was the most taxing bit of driving I've ever done. And we moved up the field a lot and went from 8th to 4th, but it was nerve-wracking. I got out and said to myself, I'm never going to hop in this thing again, and never going to go back to Le Mans again. I thought I'd tempted fate, you know, 3 times is a lot of times there, and you know, you look at the old crosses around the track, there's too many of them, and I thought, you know, you can't do this forever, get out. The experience of that, what was called Group C era in the early 80s in Australia, by comparison today, there is no comparison. They were cars that had to be built to some requirement by the manufacturer. We had lots of hassles with the cams of the day then. There was petty arguments about preparation and, you know, have you got the right bit of trim on the car, and all rubbishy things. And it really made up my mind in those very early days that we couldn't allow the cams, for instance, to run the show, because I felt they were doing a bad job, and that's really gave me all the homework and experience of which I use now today to make it better for us, and it's just no comparison. The early touring cars I drove, the Tiranas and you know, the A9Xs and things, which, what's that, 20, 30 years ago now, they were terrible things to drive. They didn't handle, they had no brakes. All this is with the great benefit of hindsight. But they weren't stable at high speed because they didn't have the aerodynamic aids that we give them, and you know, the advances that cars have made by comparison to them is just massive. And you know, you'd never want to have a car that handled as bad as those things.
Here he comes. Little taily in the Nissan into the right-hander. Great pitches.
That really is remarkable. He can place that little car anywhere. The outside, the inside, goes deeper under brakes. If the thing gets out of shape, he can catch it fairly comfortably.
We went from the Australian Group C era and then into what was the International Group A era. Again, that you see, it was cams not knowing which way to go, and our own entrance and the owners of race cars weren't remotely organised in those days, so we had this Group A experience put on our table, and it was really a disaster in my opinion. It was a category that was doomed for failure, again because the manufacturers were massively involved, and we were running with rules that were invented for European type manufacturers and trying to force that onto our local car companies, and it was just far too expensive, and the crowd really didn't like it, that they couldn't relate to you know, what's a Sierra. Like we all knew a Sierra was something that come from England, and it was had a lot of power, and that's about it. And the whole era I just think was pathetic, because the rules were then made around the cars with turbochargers on, and we even had special petrol which only suited the turbocharged cars. And you know, if you had a carburettor car, which I did, and you weren't in the hunt. So I had about 3 or 4 years there where there was just no way in the world you could win a race, all being equal.
The dawning of a new era, certainly as far as V8 5-litre racing is concerned in the 90s here in Australia. And we have a lot of the world watching to see how the formula pans out. But so far, Alan Moffat, the indications are excellent.
They are, Mike. This is much more than just a blast from the past. We've got all the refinements of Group A racing as we've come to know it, and good, strong V8 5-litre engines, 13 cars within a 1-second bracket. We haven't seen that in a long time.
The return to the V8s in the early 90s as opposed to the imported marques that were racing around in those times, really it centres purely on popularity. The fans really relate to the cars that they can see on the showroom, drive on the roads, and I think the moment that that returned, we saw an almighty resurgence to the popularity of the sport.
Well, it was popular because we woke up that we weren't selling Sierras in Australia. What the public want to see in Australia is a Holden and a Falcon going head-to-head against each other. And by 1993, the group of drivers that had formed an association drafted in conjunction with the Australian authorities the 93 formula, which we have in place today, and it was a success from day one. There was hardly been a page changed originally, and it's just got better and better and better.
To have a car where you can compare yourself mechanically immediately with the opposition and not have to worry that the opposition had a turbocharger on with another 300 horsepower or four-wheel drive, it was a great relief. It really was a relief to think, gee, I can really now mix it on a level playing field, and we just get on with it. And with our introduction of a Vesco, and with the changing of the sort of the way it's run, where us team owners have got now all the influence, and we've got a good marketing connection through a Vesco to SEL. All those things have been so positive to the sport and the way a car is to race and run, and finally when you drive a car today, based on all these rules we put on, they're the best race cars I've ever driven in my life. And these are all factors that weren't there in the 80s, and as I say, through the Tiga and the Vesco corner, now we've addressed all these things, and very, very pleased to have done it. We've done it our way. We've let cams have to go much earlier. They didn't do any good. We're now doing it, and it's very good.
We're trying every move in the book. Over, under, inside, outside, trying to find a way through on John Bell.
The level of competition probably over the last 2 years has really jumped up a level, because they introduced what they call a control tyre. So everyone's on the same tyre, which means everyone is a lot closer. And I mean, if you take one of the races this year in Victoria at Winton, there was 21 cars covered by 1.1 seconds. That's just unheard of in motor racing generally throughout the world.
The current V8 supercars are superb to drive. They respond well, they're precise.
Oh no, look, it's Larry.
They're fast.
Between those two cars, side by side under...
Everything works properly.
They've got a pad change window.
Now, handling's superb. They're aerodynamically very stable.
Turn 3, that's a dangerous...
They're really great cars to race.
Talking about the conditions, and here we go. Seat makes an outside move on Larry. We go on board now with Seat. We look aside, almost a little bit of contact.
Crisscross, because you've got to be on the inside for this next corner now, where Glenn ended up being on the outside.
Oh, yes. This means a Lachlan Seat on the inside, run on skate.
Raceway gets 2 wheels up in the air to the track.
Dunlop, onboard camera. You're riding with Russell Engel. The enforcer is it? Forget it, boys. These guys are playing hardball.
It's slow because you hear the squealing brakes.
He's trying to weave his way through past Pearson, past Larkin. Look at him go! 35 kilometres an hour, braking hard. There's Larry Perkins.
Going back a few years, they used to handle a bit evil. They used to roll around a lot. They weren't very solid.
Oh, look where he's heading. Goodness me, there's going to be a big accident. Murphy, straight on. He comes up under brakes.
Oh, Larry goes. Speed at the...
Oh, contact there. He's taken out Engel.
Oh, and...
Oh, Larkin.
Richards, one. Oh, here we go.
Crazy stuff. Stephen Richards and Larry Perkins. Perkins has done it. Oh, Larry and Stephen's gone too.
Larry Perkins is definitely an endurance man. Definitely. He admits it himself. He specialises in long distance racing. I know he gets his ultimate enjoyment out of long distance racing, and his record speaks for itself, and definitely an endurance man.
Larry certainly had great success in the endurance races. He's been unbelievably successful at Bathurst, and typically he's done well in the Sandown 500 and this event, the Queensland 500, and got a lot of respect for what Larry achieved overseas as well. You think about what he did at Le Mans on several occasions, and I think the last time was about 1988, driving the Silk Cut Jaguar, and he more than showed his skill against the Europeans. So that's probably an appropriate description, I guess.
Come 93, I needed a co-driver, and I'd done the 12-hour race at Bathurst in a Lotus, and I remember following Greg Hansford around for many laps, and I said to Greg, if you're doing nothing at Bathurst this year for the 1,000-kilometre race, I'd like to hire you,
Could he do it, they asked. LP gassed up the Castrol Commodore and hardly lifted off the pedal. He was truly magnificent across Skyline, and at checker time he bettered Skate's mark by more than half a second.
And Larry, happy as Larry Parton.
I radioed into my guys and I said, where are we on the pecking order? And the guy said, oh, it's second quickest. I said, second quick? I said, I've got about 3 seconds up my sleeve, which, you know, you couldn't remotely do that today. And so from that point on, each practice session, I think every single practice session we were fastest, including the qualifying.
Larry Perkins and Mark Scaife. Who will it be into the first turn? Off, racing, Perkins by the country mile. Wins the start. Scaife is nobbled by about 3 on the inside as they come roaring up to the first turn.
But look at Perkins. He said he wanted to break this field apart. He wants to set the pace and demolish the opposition. He's doing the right way in this opening lap.
The V8s as Perkins leads them down Conrod.
Pedal to the metal. Larry Perkins got the Holden V8 revving very strongly. 550 horsepower unleashed on Conrad as they come under our camera for the first time. Thomas Mazera in second position. Mark Scaife in third.
As the veteran brings them across the line and the hands go up. Larry Perkins comes in for his pit stop. Now will Larry step out? Let's go down to Andy Raymond.
Larry will step out. Greg Hansford, former motorcycling aces, jumping in the car. Larry in a complete lather of sweat. It is a regulation stop. All 4 times.
He was a very good driver, very clean and smooth and kind on the equipment, and we got on very well too. There was no ego problems and so on, and he was very laid back bloke, Greg was, and you know, we went through the Bathurst race. He was a bit slow at first, but you know, it didn't worry me. I said, "Don't worry about that, Greg. Just pace yourself." And he appreciated that I didn't want him to be on pole position on his first lap, and our styles fitted in with each other.
It's quite a phenomenal talent that this guy possesses. And the fact that this man, Larry Perkins, has entrusted this car at this critical stage of the race for this co-driver just shows how good Hansford is behind the wheel. Well, apparently down in the Perkins pit, they're getting ready to put slicks on the car, maybe intermediates. It's going to be very interesting. This is a really hard one to pick.
Yes,
Larry Perkins.
You know, variables. This is one of them.
Sure is.
Look at Conrod Straight. It's bone dry.
Well, there's certainly not enough water on the track for full wet tyres. These sort of track conditions would destroy wet tyres in very few laps indeed. Yeah,
Keep in mind,
they're not
Larry.
intermediates.
Hope very much that it's the right decision for Larry. They've done everything right all day. This is definitely their last stop. They don't need any more fuel. They've gone past 129 laps. They will definitely get home on fuel. They're putting 4 cold slicks on. This is the unfortunate thing. If the tyre was hot, if the slick was hot, he would have a fair chance of keeping heat in them and then making the car work properly. But by starting off with cold slicks, Larry Perkins is going to be working very, very hard.
Thank you, Gricey. 28 seconds for that stop. Very slick. Driver change, 120 litres of fuel, 4 new tyres. They can run through to the finish on this.
And he rejoins the race in first place.
Right, and the Winfield team, no,
he doesn't.
No, this is the battle for the lead. Scaife, or Richards I should say, just managed to squeeze through there. And as the rain comes down, now this is the crucial. This will win or lose the motor race for Larry Perkins. If this rain continues or abates, it's going to be a critical thing for him.
This is a brave gamble.
Oh boy, oh boy. If he loses his advantage, if he's picked his tyres right, he can go to the finish without a stop, and the Winfield team do have to make another stop. Now, if it keeps raining, he'll lose that advantage. Probably is the right decision. There's no rain from the southwest, just passing showers, so if Larry can survive on these tyres, he's taking it very, very gently across the top, just trying to get some temperature into the slicks without losing the whole thing.
Guess what? They're leaving the tyres on. They're going to go home with the warm slicks. There's only a couple of... They're measuring fuel by time. They know the fuel's great, and he'll be out of here with a fishtail so quickly. But they're actually, the fuel is flowing in. They've worked out how much they need to get home. They're timing the flow, and they're out.
Whoa.
That's a quickie.
22 seconds, I had it. And Larry Perkins has ducked through to the lead.
Yeah, you want to know where he is? He's on his way up Mountain Straight at the moment.
Oh boy. We've got a race in our hands, folks. Larry Perkins, you heard the roar from the crowd on pit straight. He's taken the lead.
Heck of a finish, you're not kidding. Larry Perkins, race leader, 16-second advantage as they pass the start-finish line, but I think that might have extended just a little bit because...
Looking for the last lap board. The great race of 93 as they come across the strike, and yes, it's there, and the crowd go up as Perkins takes it up to the left-hander. Greg Hansford can't believe it. Nothing could be so cruel to rob him of this one, or Larry for that matter. The gap still constant, back to Jimmy Richards, in the number 1 Winfield Commodore, back in third.
Looking at that, he's reduced it a bit. It's 13 seconds now.
He's not going to make 13 up in one lap, but I'll tell you what, he has come storming back at him, has Jimmy Richards.
I suggest Larry's probably easing off a little, is he?
He's the insurance policy is being filled in.
Richo's just put in a 2:19, Larry's done a 2:22. So, you know, motor racing, a second's good enough to win a motor race. Larry's just got to get across the top. He can almost coast from there.
BP cutting for the final time. Some slower cars for Larry to deal with as he heads to the top of the mountain. To his red turn is the next one. Here he comes, a kick to the left. The crowd are already ready to welcome him.
Don't they know it? LP.
Here he comes. LP on the gas to his Top Gun. Season 93.
It's a record crowd. It's a very vocal crowd. This is what they came here for.
Slower car up ahead. Larry gives him plenty of space.
I think you'll find that's John Cleland.
John Cleland up in the 05 car ahead of him. Look at the marshals. Larry Perkins returns to the mountain. Last victory here in 1984. It's taken him 9 years.
He's a triple winner. He's going to add number 4 this afternoon.
A long time between drinks for Larry Perkins. This will be a sweet one. Choice of tyres. We questioned his choice of tyres when he decided to go out on slicks when the rain was coming down quite heavily earlier. We wondered if it was a mistake. It certainly was the right choice.
Yeah.
And he's going to reap the harvest.
Well, he's putting a quick little sprint in here down towards Caltex Chase. Now through the gears. Couple of cars to deal with before the checkered flag comes out.
Come on, yes, sir.
Yes, he's done very well. He coasts out of here. Bridgestone Bridge. The next landmark as he hauls it down here, and the throats of all the fans are starting. Perkins, Perkins, Perkins. And why not? One of the best victories. He's done it in the new V8 Formula. Larry Perkins wins the Tooheys 1000. Everyone, this is the happiest scene I think we've ever seen here. And there's the man that chases him. Gathered a lot of ground.
That was one of the most absorbing battles you'll ever see for the lead. It was on from lap 1. It went right through to 161.
He got it down to 10 seconds on the final lap. 10 seconds.
Greg Hansford, would he be thrilled?
But it was a good race because I had a very good race with Mark Scaife, and we raced each other for about 80 laps.
It was a race where we did every lap like a qualifying lap for almost all day, and there was 10 seconds between us at the end of the day. So it was probably the best race, or one of the best races I've ever had.
It was great to have a good race with some good competition in that car, which it was, and to come out on top at the end of the day, it was very satisfying.
Larry Perkins and Greg Hansford.
We ended up being a very good team, and we picked up the win, and it was a fantastic win, and but it wasn't to be, as we know. Poor Greg then eventually had his 2-litre crash at Phillip Island, and he was killed. So it was a very sad day for us as a team, because I thought I was going to be a teammate with Greg for many, many years, and wasn't to be, and we had to move on.
He's definitely built up a reputation of being sort of the king of endurance racing. I think it's a fact that he runs endurance spec cars all year, and the cars are very reliable and they just don't fail. I think at Bathurst he's got something like a 96% finishing rate.
Me and my boys, we went through the list of who's available. I wanted to hire only Australians, and I wanted to have someone who had was really into wanting to win races, and that's why I wanted to look to the Australians who'd gone overseas and tried to make it. And Russell Ingall's name was on the list among others, and I remember seeing him at the Sandown race the year before I hired him, and we had a Formula Ford get-together, the last 20 years of Formula Fords, and we were all assembled at the racetrack on the starting grid, and nobody's saying too much, and I've come up and I've said, look, out to nobody in particular, I said, I still reckon I could beat all of you blokes today if we had a Formula Ford each. And it was a big statement, as you know. I'm the old fella.
There was Larkham and a few others there, and Thomas was there and that sort of thing, and everyone sort of bowed their heads and sort of didn't really answer back to him. And I was the only one that picked up and said, yeah, all right, you jump in, mate, I'll give you a run. I reckon I could kick your butt pretty easy too.
So I admired that, if you like, in him. I want to hire a guy who is a proper racer, not a pretend racer. And Russell had won races in Europe. He'd failed in his bid to become Formula One, but he wasn't a failed race driver. And so I had no hesitation to ring him up, and I didn't know the guy, and say, hey, you want to drive at Bathurst, you got to drive. You know, this is the deal. And so on. He immediately jumped at it. And I had my goals continually and always focused on Bathurst. That's where we were on the second row of the grid, and I had only gone 50 metres in the race, and Craig Lowndes and I had a straight line tangle with each other, and his exhaust pipe cut into my tyre, and I instantly had a flat tyre on lap 1 of the 162 laps. I was sort of immediately devastated. I thought, I can't believe this, you know. And anyway, I quickly got over that and nursed it back to the pits without damaging the car further. And as you might know, a lot of drivers do damage the car beyond repair with a flat tyre. So I calmed myself, drove back cautiously. We put new tyres on, and then from every single lap we did, that race had to be absolutely flat out.
Wondering where Larry Perkins is. Of course, he had to stop after lap 1 to change a deflated tyre, put him back to 24th spot, now up to 20th, and I can tell you he is lapping at exactly the same time as Jim Richards and a lot faster than some of the people in between.
1 lap behind, Larry Perkins getting out of the car, Russell Ingall getting into the car.
I honestly thought the day was over. Like, I didn't think from a lap down there was no way. Obviously the car was still all right, but there was no way we were going to win it. So I mean, we were really punishing the car. You know, before that day, before Sunday, Larry was saying, "Oh, in the endurance race, you've got to take it a bit easy." But after what happened, he just said, "Look, go for it. Just push as hard as you can." And the crew told me, said, "As soon as you get in the car, you push it as hard as you possibly can."
There's the 7th place driver in the field, Larry Perkins, and Ingall in the Castrol Commodore number 11.
Great recovery by them. They've come from 26th on the first lap after their puncture.
Where would this bloke be running if he hadn't had the stop after 4 laps for a quick tyre change?
Yes. He's hung in there. Bulletproof engineering of Larry Perkins. Fantastic co-drive by Russell Ingall.
I guess the plan is you've got to try and go from where you are to up alongside Glenn Seaton as quickly as you can.
Yeah, not wrong about that.
Well, Larry, you've put in some amazing performances at Mount Panorama. If you pull this one off, you'll be the Bathurst legend of all legends. Haven't they got some mumbo in a straight line? Look at Larry!
Here comes Perkins down the outside of 35 Alan Jones. That's one he's got rid of.
Listen to the crowd roar as Perkins comes inside of him down through Caltex Chase. He's up to 3rd position. Perkins is on a flyer.
Into Caltex Chase, the exit. Boy, has he made this a race and a half. Shades of 93. Well, if you wonder why Seaton's taken off, he knows enough about Larry's engineering prowess.
Well, Larry has had
a crowd. The majority are Holden fans here. And they're willing him on as he comes through this turn. He's got Mountain Straight, and he...
We take Castrol Oil's race cam from the front spoiler of the Castrol Holden.
Oh,
back
down
to
the inside.
Very, very close. There must have been a tap there.
Had to be.
Look here, Larry Perkins really applying the thumb screws. Jones gets out of that corner reasonably quick. Larry filling up the mirrors on the Coke number 4. Which way is he going to go down?
Down the inside here of Brad Jones.
Got him!
One more! He's driving up to the front.
Second spot, 29th to 2nd. What a drive.
Can you believe this? More than a lap down. Larry Perkins in 2nd position. He's only got 1 car ahead of him. Again, we're heading for a classic Ford Holden battle here.
And we had to pass every single car in that race to win the race, and we did.
Just going to try and time Larry Perkins' pit stop here, as you said, a very crucial stop, looking at being...
95 was the first year I ran my own brake calipers. I designed and we made them in-house, and I worked with the Endless company from Japan to make brake pads, so we could put some brake pads in the car at the start of the race, and we didn't want to go near them again. And first time Bathurst was run without a brake pad change, and it certainly caught some of the opposition off guard that we saved time in the pit stops for obvious reasons, no brake pad change. Yeah, a good thing to do at the time, and there's now a rule in place where we have to change brake pads. So we've had another little targeted rule, but I do support the rule. It makes it a more level playing field.
And a problem here for Glenn Seaton. He's come out of the corner and the engine is off song in the number 30 Peter Jackson Falcon. And just look how quickly Larry Perkins is gaining. What wretched luck here for Seaton. He's had this one absolutely locked up and Perkins is all over him.
Glenn Seaton was the last guy to pass, and he was really had been almost cruising all day, and when I got to his tail he decided to go a bit harder, and I'm led to believe that he'd never ran full revs all day, whereas we'd been running at 7,500 all day, and he had to up his performance a bit, and his engine wouldn't take him. Broke a valve spring, 9 laps to go, and we cruised past him, and you know, he'll probably never forget 1995 either, but at the end of the day, there's a winner and a lot of losers.
Can you believe the depths and the heights of human emotion that have been tested here this afternoon? Glenn Seaton so close yet so far. There's Jack, Dad's almost home.
And his sister, Nicola.
Nicola there too. Boy, oh boy, incredible race of changing fortunes. So much drama in this leading bunch. 6.5 hours of mechanical and physical torture. Perkins once again has come from last. The first time, I can't imagine a time in the history of this race where a guy in last position has won the race.
Never been done.
When he came in on the first lap, we said, yeah, we knew he was going to fight back and we figured he'd get a top 10 finish, but to do it in this order and land up here in the front row.
Last lap board is being readied for Larry Perkins, and they will cheer themselves hoarse for the last 2 minutes and 15.5 seconds around this circuit for Larry Perkins. Here they go.
He won't be happy until he gets up on top of the hill. Gary has still got a car behind him, and if anything was to go wrong on the back straight here.
Perkins comes around here at the top of the mountains.
There you go.
We said,
while I'm still going around and the car's going, I want to thank my 15 blokes at work. They just do a superb job. And the pressure of looking after the 10 customers, I'm just very thankful to those blokes.
Larry Perkins and Russell Engel, the great race winners, the Tooheys 1000 for 1995.
Thanks, fellas.
Can you still hear us?
Yeah, loud and clear.
Larry, Mark Osler, would you ever have believed 6.5 hours ago you'd be taking the checkers flag?
Well, up until we got lapped, I still thought we had a chance. When we got lapped, though, with that pace car business, I thought that we were buggered. Yeah, but Russell did such a tremendous job, though.
Even the last lap, I think, was something like a 13 and a half, 2 minutes 13 and a half, which was an incredibly fast time. And when that checker flag came out, I was mighty happy, I can tell you.
If you're that far back, you really don't stand a chance. And you know, he did a fantastic job. The team obviously did some great pit stops.
Ladies and gentlemen, Larry Perkins and Russell Engel.
He's everything I really wanted. He's good with the public. He has an image. Sometimes not so good with the stewards, though. But
look, I'd like to tell everyone out there, especially the people that are barracking for me, don't you worry. I'm going to be getting in there, and sparks will fly. I guarantee it.
Here he is on the inside. Gotcha. The big nudge on the inside. Oh, no! A side option. That's the long way around for Murphy.
Through goes Russell. Oh, no end of grief. He's hard to be beating at a million miles.
To a brilliant I thought he wouldn't be long. And he's got him. Yes. Russell Engel's not stopping for anybody. He takes out our third and final race here today. Well done, Russell Engel. Comes Russell Engel the outside on Dick Johnson. 250 kilometres per hour. Engel is number one in race number one. Well done, Russell Engel. And Engel getting very, very close to the command. Now, look if he can get the draft. And here he comes up the inside. He's got him too. Russell Engel, can you believe this? From 13th position.
This man is just awesome, isn't he?
Well, excellent stuff. The hand out the window and Russell Engel, we can say now. Down, whoa!
Side by side.
But he has the run.
And he's got him. What?
Oh, look at the contact between the two of them. Russell Engel, the enforcer, makes it 2 from 2 as he comes down to the line. And look at that. Yes. The clenched fist. He is very, very happy. He knew he needed that. And he is ecstatic.
That's Russell, But we operate as a team and we get on fine.
3, Charlie. We haven't seen too many passing manoeuvres though yet.
Well, Russell certainly has cut it pretty tough in Europe driving Formula Ford, and he's not going to give in for this one. He's going to be pressing on because he's had that experience over there.
Here today at the island, and at the moment it's a Castrol Commodore domination.
Well, as it has been for the last couple of races at the Melbourne Grand Prix and up at Surfers Paradise, it's been Castrol 1-2. What value they're getting this year?
Hard under brakes as they come over Lukey Heights now. It's going to be interesting to see what Russell Ingall does with it. He just sits in behind the boss.
The relationship between Ingall and Perkins, it's a great relationship. They love stirring each other. I was around there this morning, Mark, when Russell Ingall was applying that yellow tape across the front of his screen so we can identify him, and Larry said, why don't you put it down the middle of the car and down the back? We're watching the front end of the field. It is still Perkins and Ingall. Watch the speed go up. Now, laser speed, 240, 259. It's climbing, getting up, 270 now. 270 kilometres per hour as they head down the main straight.
Super concentration needed for that fast right-hand corner at that sort of speed. As I say, the corner tightens up and you need to be exactly on the right path.
Last lap this time around, so Perkins in control. Ingall in second position, Jones in third, Bow in fourth. Then it's Brock, the 05 Commodore in fifth, Johnson, Faulkner, Richards, Longhurst and Poole. And no one behind Larry Perkins has been able to make a move on the Castrol cars. Perkins heads up toward Lukey Heights for the final time. Got his teammate Russell Ingall in behind him. He knows that if he wins this race, Ingall only has to finish second or third to take overall points on the day, and that'll be a great position championship-wise for the Castrol team, considering Wayne Gardner's strength coming out of Calder. Thought he may have been able to build on that championship points advantage, but no luck here today.
Right now, checkered flag is in readiness. It is going to be a Castrol 1-2. Larry Perkins brings it home. Well done. He takes out race 3. Russell Ingall, lights on, hand out the window. He comes in for second position. Alan Jones in for fourth. And that means that Russell Ingall will be at the top of the points for this, the second race.
And as a boss, I mean, there's no doubt about it. He's one of the hardest guys in the business, and that's well renowned. And if he doesn't like you, he'll tell you, you know. And to me, that's exactly the best way to be. At least with Larry, you know where you stand straight out the gate and straight to it.
The reliability of your car is the absolute essential ingredient. That's what was missing mostly in my Formula One career, and you know, I sought to address that, and I think that's really what's made my business what it is today.
The thing that amazes me is that Larry's team is probably not that flush with enormous amounts of dollars like some of the other teams, and they are, with the amount of 1-2 finishes that they have had this year, they've done an amazing job.
Larry has proven on numerous occasions he can build a bulletproof car.
Well, he definitely builds a strong car for endurance. They've generally been a bulletproof car. They if not win, they definitely finish.
I'm very proud of our reputation that we have bulletproof cars, but the sound preparation comes from, though, the individuals who work for me and who are willing to work as a team. Preparation's all about being logical and being able to get the priorities of engineering in the right order. You know, it's no good having the most powerful engine if you've got the weakest gearbox. You've got to have the chain uniform, and that's where I like to think we have our strengths come from, that everything is consistently good.
And it's amazing how people put a lot of attention into the big details, like making sure probably the wheels don't fall off, but they don't worry about silly little things like the throttle cables and that sort of thing. It's amazing how you go through the field and there'll be 10 people that have stories about 2-cent components flicking off and stopping the car, but that's the Larry's strong points. He goes through all the little and big things and makes sure the car doesn't stop.
The endurance thing is more that it brings out the best in engineering of a team, and I guess so for Larry's really the because he's such a good engineer. It shows up in endurance races because usually that's when good cars keep going and bad ones don't.
There's plenty of drivers in the current V8 field that don't necessarily have all of the feelings for the car that they should have. They're very good drivers and they're very fast drivers, but there are very few true development drivers. And Larry's one of them. He has a feel for the car because he knows what he's put into it. If he takes a ball bearing this big, he finds a way to make it a little bit smaller. But whether he makes it bigger or smaller, he makes it right to last for 1,000 kilometers at Bathurst. And in that respect, he knows how to be an endurance man.
Larry's success over the years in the endurance races has, proven to be fairly successful. So I'd say he has a very good understanding of what a car requires to go the distance, and that's what endurance is all about.
Yeah, 97 we were starting to get a bit more organised as a two-car team, and Russell was getting more familiar with driving his car. And
here the V8 roar in the Primus 1000 Classic from Mount Panorama, Bathurst.
Set to go, green light, they're away. Trot gets away to a
on the second row of the grid, very competitive. Again, we'd been saving all our shots for Bathurst.
We had a very quick car there once again, and Larry did all the hard work. I just had to back him up again and make sure he kept bringing it home in one piece.
It was helped by the performance, the mechanical performance of our opposition. They wilted. In most cases they wilted when they were behind us. The exception was Wayne Gardner. He was ahead of us, but his engine blew up.
Larry Perkins gets himself onto the last lap of this memorable race. The double celebration I'm referring to is, of course, Larry's potential victory. Larry Perkins, he is bringing it home. The Castrol Commodore under the Dunlop bridge. He is on Dunlop tyres, and hasn't it been a successful combination? Larry, Perkins and Russell Ingall, they do it for the second time together. Perkins wins the 1997 Primus 1000 Classic. There he is. Well done, Larry. And Russell Ingall, he's happy. He's over the moon, and so they should be. That's their second win. 1995.
All day the car ran strong, ran at the front, and ended up winning. It was as simple as that.
The sixth time in his career, the second time for his teammate. Give him a big cheer, Russell Ingall and Larry Perkins.
Never missed a beat. The old Castrol Commodore, she is plugged on, no problem at all. Absolutely never missed a beat. And how about the old Dunlops? Hung in there right to the end, never did anything wrong. Just absolutely, we're fantastic, we're wrapped, and thanks, Rusty.
5 litre Holdens, mate, 5 litre. Up the Holden.
Always wanted to fly, and it was always something that I never thought I'd be able to do. It was always beyond my reach, but I found out that if I saved me money and so on, I could get into flying, and I've had a fixed wing licence since 1979, 21 years, 22 years, and I only just got this helicopter now, and this is the best thing I've ever done, and this makes this puts everything else second. This flying a helicopter, I should have done it years ago, but it's just what I want. I want to fly around and look out the window, or look out the big bubble, and it's everything I've wished for. Gathered up a lot of the old tractors that I used to drive when I was a kid, and on the farm, and it's not a real sort of a big obsession. I just want to get them in out of the weather and when I finish racing, I'm going to make some of these go like they went originally. In the period when I weren't sure what I was doing after Formula One and before my sort of Holden dealer team days, I was at a bit of a loose end, and I got a phone call from Hans Tolstrop at one stage of the game, who I'd known, and he'd been watching the solar exploits of some aircraft, the Gossamer Special I think it was called. And he said, look, what can we do with some solar power? You know, can we make an aircraft or whatever, fly around Australia, something to do? I said, well, I don't know, that's been done, Hans, but why don't we make a car and we'll drive across Australia? And that's how that started, and my brother Gary worked with me on that, and we made the world's first solar-powered car, and I think it was 19 days later we ended up in Sydney, and it was really quite a big feat at the time, and when I think back on it now, 20-odd years later, 19 years later, it's it's a long time, and solar-powered cars have certainly moved on, but not that far. We were on the right track then.
The endurance man, I guess, in terms of results, he's certainly had some good results in endurance races, but he's just a good all-round competitor, has been for many years. I remember watching him when I was a kid at Symonds Plains, and he was only not much more than a kid himself, and he's just endured, he's grafted, he didn't have any family money or anything. He's achieved what he's achieved, which is plenty, by his own merit. So I think that's fantastic.
Well, he's far too enduring for my liking on many occasions. In my ANZ Sierra, which was the last time I won the Sandown 500, I beat Larry with the late Greg Hansford by 11 seconds. We certainly knew he was there. You asked me earlier, was I aware of him being a threat in 1977 at Bathurst, and the answer candidly is no. 11 seconds behind after 500 kilometers around Sandown, I can assure you. I could see his eyeballs coming through my rear window.
Do it to AJ this time. Now he has a go on him.
Oh, no love lost here. The old Formula One sparring partners, they're both over in Europe, cut their teeth in Formula 3. And
Larry. The rain's coming down. Rain's coming down heavier too. AJ.
He's gone between them. AJ's off in the sand.
They're head-to-head in tears, I'm afraid.
Oh, he'll be furious about that.
Well, you said he wasn't happy after the...
When you're racing against Larry, it's always hard, and usually it's pretty fair, but he makes it pretty tough to get past him.
He's certainly not getting any younger. I know Larry would admit that, but he's still fast and consistently fast.
I'd describe Larry as one of the fiercest, toughest competitors that I've ever driven against, and he's not only a great driver, but obviously a really good engineer, and one of the, I suppose, the icons of the game, especially now that Brock and Johnson aren't gone.
Out on the circuit, he's not a happy man. This is where the action is.
It's got to be at the end of the straight.
Side of Mark Scave. Here comes the Castrol Commodore of Larry Perkins. He's got the run. They go side by side.
Whoa, the dirt! Oh, look at that! Whoa!
Perkins hangs onto it. He does a bit of dirt and grass tracking, but he's rejoined, and he hasn't lost out too much.
That was good. So hang on.
To dominate qualifying. Let's have a look on the Shell Helix replay. Look at this, right up the inside.
Dives through the inside. Contact again on the exit. Larry decided, you're not having this. Stay where he was. Markscape came across. Well, these two...
He's a guy that sort of, he's like a bit of a terrier dog. He grabs hold of something and sort of doesn't normally let it go. And he's a pretty fierce sort of a competitor in many ways, not only in a car, but a lot of other ways.
He's very fair. He makes you work for your position on the track.
Times. Boy, he'll be pumped up now.
Look at Larry's he's pushing Craig Lowndes now.
Very, very good to race against. I've had the odd touch with him as well, but I've always found him to be more than fair. Very hard, but very fair.
He has a look on the inside of Perkins. Can't do it through Cole. Let's see how he goes out of this. He's right on Larry. Coming up onto the Ready Mix back straight. Let's see how he goes.
See the reflection of his lights. He comes up side by side as they come across the rise. 230 kilometres an hour. And Bauer goes down the the outside of Perkins, but Perkins very strong under brakes, beautifully positioned for the run on the pit straight. So Bauer is going to have to work very, very hard.
Larry goes straight for the inside line. He was trying to hold him out here, Markscape.
Well, I said that he might go for the crisscross, but Larry went straight to the inside and didn't give him the opportunity. Obviously, he's going to try to hold him up. But as I said, I think that Bowie's speed is probably a little bit too superior for it, and in the end, he'll get him.
Well, just that time around, he's done, Perkins did a 1:04.3, Bow, a 3:8. Bow is clearly the fastest man on the track at the moment. But Perkins, as he proved at Phillip Island, if you drive a nice conservative line, it's very, very tough to get someone to go around you, even if it's the long way around. Bow's attack has certainly cranked Perkins up too. He's just done a 63 as well, so they're both operating in the 63-second bracket. And Perkins really responding to the challenge. Once he's got his fingers into this one, he can almost taste it. He's not going to give it up without one heck of a fight. Bow now switches to the outside. Perkins gives him room because he knows he's on the ideal line for Yokohama corner. I'll go side by side. Bow half a car length in front, but Perkins once again very strong under brakes, takes the position back.
This is exactly the way that Larry drove at Phillip Island when he picked up a win there. Have a look at Melinda Price. She's staying with the boys too. She's doing exceptionally well. We've got 2 more laps left to run. Can Larry hang on? Here goes Bow on the outside.
And you can see Bow applying the pressure up the inside now. They go side by side through the S's. Bow just ducks back in behind the Castrol Commodore. Fantastic racing from 2 very professional motor racing drivers.
So we'll watch this time when they come up onto the ready mix back straight. Bow's been getting a pretty good exit speed out of Kolb Corner and been coming up alongside Larry. We'll see what they can do this time. Here they come down this very quite steep hill into Kolb Corner. Now watch Bow. He drifts out wide. He's going to bring it in tight, get a good run out of here. Can he get Larry this time round?
Well, it's a fabulous battle here, but I've got to say, Melinda Price sitting in there behind him doing a great job too, just to stay with him. Look at this, cut and thrust. Bow now ducks out of the outside of Perkins, has a look down the outside as they break hard for Yokohama corner. Very, very tough on brakes this turn. But Perkins more than has Bow covered. You know, Larry is going to hold him out all the way. He's a very, very tough customer. Look at him move over to the inside line to make sure that Bow, if he's going to overtake, has to go the long way around. Last lap.
This is going to be a great final lap. You're on board with John Bow. We were there for a moment. Now he cuts it back to the inside. Here goes JB. Has a look on the outside of Larry, then brings it back in. Well, 3/4 of a lap left to run here at Barbagallo. The first race of round 8 of the Shell Australian Touring Car Championship. Could John Bow start the day on a high note, or is it going to be Larry's day?
Well, fellas, can I change my bet now? Because I put my money on Bowie a minute ago.
Yeah, well, Larry Perkins, he's a very experienced guy. We've seen him in this situation plenty of times, and he's answered the challenge from Bow. Unless he makes a mistake here, he could well have the Shell 18 car covered.
Here goes John Bow. This is his final run. Let's see what he can do about Larry Perkins. If Perkins has got the inside run, which I'm pretty sure he will have, this will be Larry's race. JB has got to do it the long way. They come down into Yokohama. He's not going to be able to do it from there. It's going to be Larry Perkins as they come onto the main straight. The Castrol Commodore of Larry Perkins takes out race 1 here at Barbagallo. What a finish.
What a fantastic drive from Larry Perkins and John Bow. It was clean stuff. They took the gamble on tyres. The track conditions changed. They pushed and pushed, and not a bit of paint swap. Fantastic racing.
The thing about car racing is you have to concentrate. There is no let up at all. There's never, where you've got tennis, the game, when the ball hits the ground more than once, it's all over. You can rest for a while. You have these moments where it's not intense concentration on a continuous basis. And the car racing is the only sport I think that is absolutely intense, because if you don't concentrate for every single split second, you will make an error and you will end up in the fence. If you find that your mind is wandering and you are indeed thinking of something frivolous, you've done something wrong. You haven't got the concentration that is required. recognise and keep saying to yourself, you must finish. You know, don't have to finish on. You don't have to lead on lap 1. You don't have to lead on lap 2. You've got to lead after 1,000 kilometres or after 24 hours or whatever the race I've been in. And I've just had no trouble to switch quite deliberately into a different mode for these endurance races, and you know, I think it's paid off. The driving side of it is just been the personal challenge of myself to then match what the machinery has now been designed to do. The key to the modest successes I've had are, I'm going to start something, I'm going to finish it, and I'm going to do it well. And I think that's the whole answer in a nutshell. Great to see an enormous quantity of fans today. You know, they want your autograph and they want things signed, etc. And they really say a lot of kind things about you, and you know, it's really great. And I think a lot of that comes back to the fact I've been a sort of a solid type operator. I've never sort of been into the Hollywood side of things, and I've always been approachable. And you know, it's a great feeling to know they're all behind you. It's a very difficult thing when you retire. No one wants to drive longer than you should. In other words, if your skill has deteriorated and you still drive, get out. But you know, I still see times this year where I'm perfectly able to match it with the best and the brightest. There's times when you know, I'm not there on a consistent basis, and I've got to recognise that. But the important races are still the long distance races, and I don't reckon I have any trouble matching it on a long race with some of these guys. So it'll be a combination. I'll find a replacement that I'm comfortable with, and at the same time I'll say, well, yeah, I'll let him drive, I don't really mind. I'll go fly my helicopter. I'll very happily walk away from it, and as in from the driving, but I won't walk away from the team or the industry.
I mean, he's had a reign at the top of Australian motorsport for 20-something years. You know, it's pretty amazing, isn't it?
Larry would be up there with some of the great names of Australian motorsport, and you know, it's always hard when you mention names that you should have mentioned some others, and you don't like to leave anybody out. But I mean, you know, Stan and Alan Jones, Lex Davison, Bib Thule, those sorts of people. I'd say Larry's up there with those in terms of his status in Australian motorsport. He really put a lot into it.
He's a hero. Young and old love him for what he is. They love seeing that little old bent nose of his and those glasses like the end of milk bottles. Your little eyes peering through them, you know. When he gets mad, they all fug up, you know.
Very resourceful, terrific bloke to be with. I really like him.
I mean, there is nobody in the paddock that fights a fight like Larry. So he's the ultimate political beast, and to fight the battles that he has so long and so hard, whether you agree with him or not, you have to say that you know, he's a fighter for our sport. So that's pretty cool.
He says it as it is, and what you see with Larry is what you get. There are no false pretenses with him. He's fair, he's hard, but he's honest. And I'm very happy to be able to call him a friend.